And Rubio said that not only is the post-World War II order obsolete, he said that it was now being used as a weapon against us. So you couldn't have a stronger renunciation of the United States has two choices. Either it's going to be the global policeman and it's going to be paying the cost of the empire with these hundreds of military bases all over the place. It's going to be dealing through, coercion, blackmail, warfare, color revolutions, assassinations, and all of these tools of British geopolitics. Or the reason why the oligarchs hate these quote unquote tyrannies, autocracies, dictatorships, or whatever you want to call it, is because there's a sovereign at the top of the political command and control structure who can cut the oligarchy down to size. He is above them. And if they misbehave, he can punish them. And we saw that in Russia.
You're watching Capital Cause, and my name is Danny. Today's guest is the one and only Alex Krainer, fan favorite. Alex, thanks for coming on, my friend.
Thank you for having me, Danny. Greetings to everybody out there.
Yeah, for sure. It's our pleasure here. Let's go ahead and dive right in, Alex. Obviously, so many things going on. I'm going to let you take this one. For you right now, what is the biggest story on your radar screen?
The biggest story is the relations between the United States and Russia being reestablished.
Right.
So I think it is, it's very hard to overestimate how important this is. Back forever ago in 2018, then Foreign Minister of Germany, Sigmar Gabriel, he gave an interview to the Bild magazine in Germany, and he said that the relations between the United States and Russia are the most important relations in the whole world because they define the future of humanity. And the fact that they were shattered put us all on a slippery slope to a nuclear Armageddon. And then we got 4 years of Biden administration, which straight out of the gates started antagonizing Russia in a very heavy-handed way. So on day 12 of Biden's presidency, he made his first official call to Vladimir Zelensky. And from that day on, Zelensky, who was elected because he promised that he would normalize relations with Russia, that he would make peace with the people in Donbass, that he would re-legalize the Russian language, he made a 180-degree turn, and the escalation to war started straight away. The day after he spoke with with Biden, Zelensky outlawed his biggest opposition party, which by this point was the favorite to win in the next elections. He took 3 opposition television networks off the air, even though in his election campaign he explicitly promised not to do that. And in the Biden administration, the neocons were kind of joking like, this is Zelensky's inauguration gift for Biden. And then, as if that weren't enough, 2 weeks later, he arrested the leader of the largest opposition party, Viktor Medvedchuk. That started the escalation that, in little over a year, precipitated the war between Russia and Ukraine. And this, as we now know, was a proxy war between the United States and NATO against Russia. And so Donald Trump apparently pulled the handbrake on all this. And Donald Trump's rhetoric and declarations are very difficult to judge because it barely seems to make sense. He's all over the place, and I think that's partly by design. That's his management style. That's his governing style. He tosses hand grenades, gets everybody's attention in one direction, and then he does something else. So I think we have to not get too excited about what he says, or even what J.D. Vance says, because J.D. Vance just came out today with a threat against Russia that if they don't accept the deal that they put on the table, that then the United States is going to do this and that and the other thing. So we have to judge them on their deeds. Let's see what happens. The fact that, Friday, the fact that Putin and Trump spent 90 minutes on the phone on Wednesday, 12th January, is hugely important. It dramatically reduces the risk of an uncontrolled escalation. It creates the space to discuss, to negotiate, to set the stage for ending the Cold War between the United States and Russia and turning the direction of the global order towards better developments. So, to my mind, no doubt, this is the most important thing that happened this week. I don't know. The week is not over. It's, the Trump is carpet bombing us with executive orders and deals and threats and whatever he's doing. But I think it's very hard to overestimate the importance of this one.
Yeah, and he also got an invitation from Putin to attend Victory Day, the big Victory Day parade over in Russia, alongside Xi Jinping. It's kind of like, when you have two friends that are mad at each other and you're kind of like in the middle of it, and then you invite one friend and you invite the other friend because you want them to talk. Is that what's going on here?
Some version of it. And I think that would be great. I would really like to see that happen. I would really like the footage of the three of them celebrating the Victory Day parade. It would be a tremendous statement against fascism and Nazism, which is alive and well in this world. It would be a big middle finger salute to the EU, NATO, and the Brits, who are still desperately pushing for an escalation of war. And, who knows? Of course, they will get along, all three of them. There's no question about that. And they would discuss the real stuff, not the nonsense, not the distractions, the real stuff. And I'm sure that it would be the beginning of developments that will ultimately make this world a better place.
Yeah, are we seeing a renegotiation of Yalta 2.0? And for those who may not know what that is, can you explain to the audience?
I think that Yalta was Stalin, Churchill, and FDR. It was the end of the World War II, but that was followed by the Churchill's Fulton speech. I think, but I hesitate because I might butcher this, but I think that they kind of divided the spheres of influence. Okay, you stay in Eastern Germany, East Berlin, West Berlin, Eastern Europe, your sphere of influence, Western Europe, our sphere of influence. We'll leave military bases and all this stuff there. And I think that the Soviets pretty much abided by that. But then you had 1946, Fulton speech, in which FDR was gone now, right? And you had Truman, and in Truman's presence, Churchill gives a speech, and he says that Soviet Union is the enemy of the West. And then 3 years later, they form NATO, which is an anti-Soviet alliance. And then they keep adding countries. And then in 1952, they added Western Germany, And only then the Soviets responded by creating the Warsaw Pact. And then you had Cold War for the next 30, 40 years. I don't think that this is if this is correct. I don't think that this is a rehash of Yalta. I think this is going to be a different multipolar arrangement. There will be spheres of influence, and I believe that the way it's going to go down is Russia being the hegemon of the Central and Eastern Europe, and let's call it the pivot area, that whole stance and Central Asia. China as the hegemon of the Eastern Asian part of the world, and the United States, the hegemon of the Northern Hemisphere, the Americas, Canada, Greenland, and all these things. Now, to use the word hegemon now has a very distinctly negative connotation, but there is some logic to it, because let's say that these global powers then also act as guarantors of peace, as the anchors of the future security architecture of the world. And then you will have regional powers like India, Iran, Egypt, Turkey, South Africa, Brazil, and I think we might see a certain resurgence of Germany, which then becomes the anchor of the European continent. And so I see the world moving in this direction. This is not so different, at least as far as the three main blocks: U.S., Russia, China, from the three-block world that was being pursued by the British Empire, and which then became the kind of the skeleton of the foreign policy order of the United States. The three-block world was already being sold to Hitler in the run-up to World War II, which is the reason why the British supported Hitler for as long as they did, well into the Second World War, because they wanted to build up Germany as the center of power in Central and Eastern Europe, and they wanted Germany to be the bulwark against the Soviets, and ultimately the bludgeon with which to destroy the Soviet Union, kind of the same role that they ascribe to Ukraine today. And then, nothing much came out of this, but the United States adopted the same essential policy in a different way, which is basically, why the Trilateral Commission is called trilateral. These are the three blocks. East Asia, of course, the Brits didn't count on China as the hegemon in East Asia, but Japan. So they wanted to dominate East Asia in alliance with Japan. They wanted to dominate Europe in alliance with Germany, and they wanted to dominate the transatlantic zone in alliance with the United States. But in essence, it was a unipolar vision, because it was all Great Britain was the hegemon that kind of glued all this together.
Right.
And then, through the Cold War, the United States was the global hegemon that kept this all together.
Is that Milner's kindergarten? Is that what was talked about in Tragedy and Hope, in terms of how to create like this roundtable group that encompassed the UK and the US? Was that an extension of it?
Yeah, I do think so. Although the first explicit formulation of this three-block world that I know of was the 1937. It was, Lord Halifax was kind of selling this to the Germans, and especially after the partition of Czechoslovakia in 1938. But this vision, this three-block world vision, already formulated British policy towards Germany. It was like a 7-point plan, 7-point policy towards Germany, which I don't remember all 7, but it was kind of that Britain would have no objections to Germany incorporating Austria, Czechoslovakia, and Danzig, that Britain would support Germany in these territorial acquisitions so long as they were peaceful, like, not through war, but through, in the same way that they took over Austria and Czechoslovakia, kind of like through diplomatic pressure and secret service maneuvering rather than outright war. In the end, they lost control of Hitler because Hitler didn't see it that way. He hated that he didn't go to war against Czechoslovakia. And after the peace conference in Munich, at which this was all, that was the famous appeasement, the betrayal of Czechoslovakia, Hitler was furious. He said that that was the first and last international conference he would ever pursue. And then when it came time for him to take Poland, he absolutely did not consider anything other than attacking Poland militarily. Anyway,
yeah. So fast forwarding to
bringing the United States into the orbit was definitely part of the agenda, even though they were already working on that since the 1870s, 1890s. It was kind of a covert diplomacy with the United States. They weren't that I'm aware of already explicitly formulating the three-block agenda, but obviously that was what it is. And at the same time, they were cultivating Japan as an ally there, and then they kind of got Japan as a proxy to go to war against Russia. So we had the Russo-Japanese War, 1905. So clearly they were already working on that. So whether it was articulated explicitly or not, I think you're right. It's exactly what they were doing.
Yeah. So fast forwarding to modern time, if you recall, during the tail end of the Biden administration, they were Trump-proofing the funding for Ukraine. Has that been the case at all, or has Trump been able to kind of sidestep all of their Trump-proofing in terms of ending that war?
I think they already transferred a lot of the funds that they had earmarked for Ukraine before Trump got into office. And I think that maybe that's why Trump sent Scott Bassett, he sent his Treasury Secretary to Ukraine. That's weird, but that's what he did. I think maybe they're trying to claw back some of that money or demand concessions for whatever resources and assets Ukraine has to transfer it back to the United States. Whatever the Biden administration did, it's a bad dream. I think that most of it, at least a lot of it, can be reversed. And so I think that hopefully Trump administration is working on reversing that. Now, what's going to come of it? We'll have to watch the pageant. I don't know.
Now, we did a prior podcast before, you and I, where you talked about the potential collapse of the UK. Now that this peace deal is becoming more and more likely, it doesn't appear like the UK can afford to go to war against Russia on its own. Neither can France. I mean, between the two of them, they're the only two countries with a handful of nukes in Europe to really compete with Russia. Do you see this kind of accelerating the collapse of the UK, or will the UK and France and the rest of Europe say, to hell with it, we don't need the US after all, which is what Pete Hegseth said the other day. He said that Europe, if you want to go to war, I mean, I'm paraphrasing, if you want to go to war with Russia, then more power to you, but we're not going to get involved. It was effectively the death of the post-World War II world order. And with that in mind, where does that put Europe? Where does that put the UK? Is the UK now more likely to accelerate its collapse now that this war is most likely coming to an end?
I do think so, because Trump has kind of put them on the spot holding the bag, because they have been gung-ho for this war in Ukraine, except, of course, they were counting on getting the United States to wage that war for them. They, as always, the Brits always act through proxies, and they always act through this secret diplomacy where they try to push others to fight their wars. Mm-hmm. And so now Trump administration has explicitly said no. And moreover, if you rewind the clock to the 15th January, when we had the confirmation hearings for Marco Rubio, in his statement to the Senate, explicitly rejected the post-World War II order. The whatever you want to call it, the rules-based order,
Right.
And he said that this
order of events, by the way. I mean, no one expected Marco Rubio. No one expected Marco Rubio to come out like that.
Yes, I mean, yeah, that was quite a shock, but it was only the first of the shocks in foreign policy terms. And Rubio said that not only is the post-World War II order obsolete, he said that it was now being used as a weapon against us. So you couldn't have a stronger renunciation of that post-World War II order, which implies that the Trump administration is probably dead set on building an alternative global order. Now, what is it going to be? I think that it's pretty clear that going forward, the United States has two choices. Either it's going to be the global policeman, and it's going to be paying the cost of the empire with these hundreds of military bases all over the place. It's going to be dealing through, coercion, blackmail, warfare, color revolutions, assassinations, and all of these tools of British geopolitics, or it's going to be a polite guest at the table of the global banquet with other powers together as equals. Now, I think that the cost-benefit analysis is a million times in favor of being a polite guest than being the global empire. Every empire in the world through history has collapsed, and it's always collapsed because the cost of maintaining the empire becomes unbearable. It already has become unbearable for the United States. This is why we have Trump in power now. This is a reaction to the continuously worsening situation at home, forever wars abroad, and a military budget that is absolutely stratospheric. I don't think that the American people quite realize it's become part of the normal. But the most powerful military in the world today, which is not the United States, it's Russia. Before the war in Ukraine, their military budget was something like $80 billion a year. A nuclear superpower. The United States...
Some change to us.
Yes, that's like 1/10 of the U.S. military budget. And now, with Doge, they're discovering that this money was spent in absolutely insane ways on insane projects for insane purposes. And it has left the United States with insufficient, surge capacity. They can produce so many 155 millimeter shells. Well, if war breaks out, you're going to need 100 times that much. There's no surge capacity. They can't produce them. And artillery, as unsexy as it is is what destroys, I think, 80 or 90% of enemy troops. So you need it. And instead, they were spending money on these Lamborghini weapons that are super sexy when you present them to the Pentagon generals and when you distribute the brochures around and you make the big light show presentations. You know how they do it. I don't know. I guess they hire Hollywood producers to put all that together. But then they don't integrate. They are built for profit. Like the whole military-industrial complex are for-profit corporations. Surge capacity is a cost. It eats into profit. Unsexy, cheap, but abundant weapons and ammunitions are cheap and unsexy, not good for profit. So, for decades, the whole system has been growing through accretion towards more and more expensive systems. Irrespective of the strategy of like thinking, how would you fight a war like this? What tools and what weapons do you need to fight the war like this? These things. Okay. What's the most cost-effective way we can build these things and make sure that they're super robust, that they can fire 24/7 for weeks on end, and that the logistics are such that these ammunition is just arriving as needed? None of that was considered. It was all neglected. And all the money was flowing to pet projects of these Lockheed Martins and Raytheons and GE and Boeing. And, the shareholders and the execs made out like bandits. And they basically left the United States with an inadequate supply of weapons and ammunitions. A disaster. And not only that, then they went and they started brainwashing the troops with LGBT and all this ideological nonsense. And so now you have a reaction to that because none of it made sense. And Trump administration is that reaction. And so I expect that there's going to be very, very radical changes over the next couple of years. But I think that a lot of those changes are going to be determined in function of what kind of arrangement is going to be negotiated between the United States, Russia, and China.
If you've been watching my channel for a long time, then you know we talk a lot about protecting your wealth in uncertain times. And with everything happening in this day and age in the markets, bank failures, inflation, geopolitical instability, and more, you need a solid plan to safeguard your wealth and your assets. Here's where ITM Trading comes in. They specialize in strategic gold and silver acquisitions, helping people just like you build real, tangible wealth outside of the system. Their team of experts doesn't just sell metals, they create custom wealth protection plans and strategies tailored to your financial goals. Their track record speaks for itself. Just look at their research and client success stories and look at all these reviews here on Google. Don't wait until it's too late. Give ITM Trading a call today or book a strategy session using the link in the description box or the pinned comments down below. I've personally looked at their strategies and let me tell you, they know their stuff. If you're serious about real financial security, ITM Trading is the team you want on your side. Check them out. Yeah, on the DoD front, I remember before with the Biden administration, they were facing a recruitment crisis, a record low recruitment crisis. Now with Pete Hegseth, this is very interesting because they bring in this former Fox News host, and now he's been kind of changing the image of the military to be tough and gung-ho, and now they can't keep up with the recruitment crisis. Was Pete Hegseth there, not because of his experience or lack thereof, but because he has the personality to bolster up the U.S. military, which had been lacking severely for at least the last 4 years. And now they've done away with all the DEI and woke stuff, and they've gone back to basics formula, so to speak.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that there's already a surge in recruitment?
Yeah, already.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, I have to say this has been very perplexing to me, because at the same time as you have this a great reset and build back better, and the push to extend the unipolar moment to create a global empire, right? At the same time, there has been systematic undermining of the militaries, not just in the United States, but everywhere. Canada, Germany, France, everywhere. And I thought, that doesn't make any sense at all. Like, why would you be undermining your military? And not only that, they stopped the drafts everywhere. They stopped the obligatory military service that I had to go to the army when I was 25 years old. They stopped all that, and not only that, then they started introducing all this LGBT stuff. They started with these transgender 3 stars and 4 stars, and they started military started taking photos with the LGBT flag. These military commanders walking around in red high heel shoes. Swedish military, their recruitment posters are not with the Swedish flag, but with LGBT flag, and it says the flag worth dying for. I thought, what? I mean, and you want to confront Russia and you want to defeat Russia and China? That doesn't make any sense at all to me. And then it kind of hit me that the enemy is not Russia and China. The enemy is at home. It's the oligarchy ruling in the United States and in Western Europe and in Japan. It's these oligarchies. And these oligarchies, their own security depends on internal security structures like FBI, CIA, NSA, MI5, GCHQ, these structures. So there's no LGBT business there. There it's all like assassins and cheats and liars, right? Manly stuff. And I realized that they're undermining the militaries because the military is actually a threat to them. Because if the military is this powerful force in command of patriotic military commanders and generals, then it becomes a threat to the oligarchy, because if it falls into the hands of, let's say, a patriotic general who understands who the enemy is, then they could be disenfranchised like nothing. So it's better to have all these ladies in transgender ladies in high heels parading around and saying, "Oh, it's the Pride Month. Oh, it's Black Lives Matter. Let's have racial divide. Let's demonize the misanthropists and how do you call them, the transphobes in our midst." So you kind of
go ahead.
You kind of demoralize the troops. You demoralize the army. You put all the wrong people in charge, and instead you're building up the internal repression structures and apparatuses. So that's what they've been doing. That's what they've been doing in Sweden, in Germany, in France, United States, Canada, all of these Western nations. That's what they've been doing. And that's what we have now. The FBI that's completely compromised, CIA that's completely compromised, and so on and so forth. It's like across the board.
Yeah, that's a very interesting perspective. I don't believe I've ever heard anyone kind of link the two together, that being the oligarchy's opposition to, or not opposition, but antagonism of the military. What's interesting is that if you look at both, you brought up Russia and China, their power structure is transparent. In Russia, it's the Kremlin. In China, it's the CCP, it's the party. In America and Europe, it's a lot more murky in terms of who's really controlling who. It's the oligarchy, it's the deep state, it's the the banking cartels. It's not as transparent as it is in Russia and China, where you can just go point, oh, Putin and Xi, or to a much lesser. Yeah, go ahead.
You know where the buck stops.
Yeah,
there's
in the U.S. It's very hard.
Yeah. In the U.S. it's very hard, and that's another thing that I worked out kind of by studying history. Like, why are all these oligarchs so devoted to democracy? You remember when, I think last year in Davos, not a month ago, but the year before that, you had Alex Soros whining about, if Donald Trump comes to power, is going to threaten our democracies.
And he couldn't string a sentence together. Like,
I know, it was like, he repeated, like 50 times in a sentence. But I thought, you're an oligarch. What do you care about democracy? You really care so much that I have power over you? That doesn't sound right to me. I wouldn't buy that from you. Anyway, here's the deal. The reason why the oligarchs hate these quote unquote tyrannies, autocracies, dictatorships, or whatever you want to call it, is because there's a sovereign at the top of the political command and control structure who can cut the oligarchy down to size. He is above them. And if they misbehave, he can punish them. He can disenfranchise them. He can have them killed, whatever happens. And we saw that in Russia in 2003. Vladimir Putin, it was before 2003. It was in 2000 or 2001. He lined up all his oligarchs, because Russia during Yeltsin's time was completely run by oligarchs. They were selecting who goes into the cabinet, who doesn't go into the cabinet. They were writing Yeltsin's decrees. When he was sober enough to sign them, he would sign them. They ruled the country. It was called the rule of 7 bankers. And all 7 of these bankers, they were basically trustees for Western financial interests. So they had the rule of the land. Now comes Vladimir Putin, lines them up, and he said, here's the deal. There's not going to be renationalization of assets. You keep what you stole, but run your businesses, pay your taxes correctly, treat your employees correctly, and stay out of politics. And this last one, they couldn't do. And so a few of the oligarchs tried to challenge him. Then they had these lawsuits in which the oligarchs lost. And then finally, Mikhail Khodorkovsky, who was the Jacob Rothschild's man in Russia, he thought, who's this bureaucrat? He's not telling me what to do. And he tried to challenge Vladimir Putin politically. And then Putin ended up busting him for, I think tax evasion or something like this. Anyway, he ended up spending 9 years in prison. And after he got out of prison, he left Russia. The result of the whole thing is that Russia, from being a complete basket case, a nightmare, a Wild West type of country, one of the most corrupt countries in the world, destroyed economy, up to their eyeballs in debt, transformed itself in the space of one generation to become again global superpower. Their economy is going on all cylinders. The life expectancy in Russia, all the misery statistics, the poverty went from 40% of the population down to, I don't know what it's at now, but it's
heading into a good direction.
Yeah, in 2000, it's definitely, the poverty rates in Russia are significantly lower than in France, Germany, Italy, United States, United Kingdom. I think they're below 12%. In Italy, it's 20%. I don't know off the top of my head what it is in Germany and in Britain, but I think that in Britain, by official statistics, we're close to 20%, but I think in reality, it's much higher than that too. And so you don't have homeless people in Russia. Standards of living have improved multifold. It's the country has had economic growth. I looked at the statistics up until, I don't know, like 2017 that I compared, China and Russia. Russia actually had a higher rate of economic growth over the period between when Putin came to power and 2017 than China did. So it's a complete spectacular transformation that took place because the nation's sovereign is accountable to the people. And it's not, like people imagine, oh, he's a dictator. If you say anything, you're dead, you're finished, you cannot say anything. No, it's not like that.
He's viewed as of the people, whereas
yes.
our elites come from a separate class. I hate to use like this leftist terminology, but it is a classist system. Whereas like our elites like hate us, like our elites disdain the common man.
They call you deplorables.
Yeah. It's like they're living in a completely different country. Whereas in China and Russia, they're autocrats. I'm not making any light of that, but they're viewed as coming of the people. And
yes.
In here in the West, what we do, we focus on like this left-right spectrum, and that's our primary concern. Where the primary concern should be, yes, that's important. That's a very important determination. But the primary axis should be whether you're sovereign or not, whether you have true sovereignty, or whether Americans, whether Europeans have true sovereignty over their own country, which is what we don't have in the United. There's so many interests acting outside of the true interest of the sovereignty of the Western people.
Yeah, I would say that you didn't have sovereignty under Obama. You didn't have sovereignty under George. You didn't have sovereignty under Joe Biden.
Because it's this internationalist class that's
exactly.
Is the internationalist clique. It's not, Obama wasn't concerned with America. Bush wasn't concerned with America. They're concerned about building out this internationalist, globalist conglomeration.
Yeah, the new world order. They were trying to build the new world order, and they were trying to submerge the United States in this new world order and subordinate American sovereignty to the to the priorities of this global imperialist cabal, which is, it has, the United States is a satellite. That's it. The headquarters is the city of London, and other satellites are European centers of powers like Berlin, like Paris, Rome, Stockholm, and so forth.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and shift over to the Middle East while we still have time. Big developments happened over this past week with the meeting between the Jordanian king, Abdullah, as well as Trump. And Abdullah, for lack of a better term, appears to have been humiliated. He was blinking rapidly. You could look at his facial expressions and his body language. He felt like he was being, he felt like a chump compared to Trump. And he did acquiesce to some of Trump's demands, i.e., a very small demand, and bringing in 2,000 Palestinian children into Jordan and things like that. What can be done of this, be accomplished with this demand to relocate the Palestinians? It seems like it's pretty much a non-starter between Egypt and Jordan. If this does come into fruition, you could easily see, in my view, civil war break out in either one of those countries. And the King of Jordan is already unpopular as he is over there in Jordan. So how do you see this happening, especially as we kind of like head into, according to Trump's terms, if the hostages aren't released by Saturday at noon, then all hell is going to break loose. Is all hell going to break loose?
I hope not, Danny. That's tomorrow, and I kind of cringe to think what might happen. But I don't think that what Trump is saying, I don't think that he means it, because it makes absolutely no sense. And between him and other people in his administration, that cannot be so dumb. Not only does it not make sense, it's utterly repugnant. And I suspect that what he's doing there is he's playing a chess move. And the last statement about this that I read on his not statement he gave verbally to the media, but what he wrote on his Truth Social network, he said that the United States would take control of Gaza after the fighting has ended, very clearly implying that he expects Israel to go into Gaza, to clean it up, that is, to defeat Hamas and remove them from Gaza, and I suppose also force the population to relocate. And then the United States would take control, and then they would rebuild their, Trump Casino and Riviera something. It sounds insane, right? So why is he saying that? Well, if I were a fanatical Israeli settler, what would I think about that? They were gung-ho counting on going to Gaza and building settlements the same way that they do in the West Bank. Now, if the United States is saying that's ours, we're going to take that. How does that affect the determination of Israelis to go fight and die and be maimed in Gaza, fighting Hamas, when they haven't been able to defeat Hamas during the first 16 months? And the IDF isn't at all, that military isn't organized to fight long, extended wars of exhaustion, right? Attrition warfare. Israeli army is organized to be like a rapid reaction force, like a blitzkrieg force. So, it has to be over in 2 to 3 weeks. Well, they've been bleeding there for freaking 16 months. And now their economy's destroyed. Social services barely function. The political class is on the verge of a civil war between each other. Benjamin Netanyahu is on a precipice of his political death and possibly his physical death, or at least, he's going to be losing his freedom really soon. And nobody can tell what's going to come after Benjamin Netanyahu. Who takes over? What new government is going to be formed? The IDF is thoroughly exhausted. The Americans can't really help them. That's an illusion that, the Americans can just come in like a cavalry and take care of it all from them. They haven't defeated Hamas. They haven't defeated Hezbollah. They have no idea what kind of a mess they got themselves in Syria. They have now upgraded Turkey as their biggest number one enemy, ahead of Iran, which is still their biggest enemy. So, and not to forget Ansar Allah in Yemen. All of these groups have them over the crosshair, over the barrel, in the crosshairs. And so, does Trump not understand this? Of course he does. He must. He has people around him who can tell him. I mean, if I understand that, of course they must understand this. So why this delusional, fantastic, and repugnant rhetoric? I can't say, but as far as I can work it out as a chess move, I think it saps Israel's determination to go fight in Gaza. Benjamin Netanyahu is still clinging to that rhetoric. But yesterday he got shouted down or day before yesterday, he got shouted down at the Knesset. People are turning, even his political. Yeah, it was ugly, and so he's really teetering on the edge. What's going to happen after him? I don't know. And then not only to mention Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Jordan. Well, okay, Jordan. King Abdullah got browbeat into accepting 2,000 children. And I have to say, I hope that not a single Palestinian child goes to Jordan. Jordan is the outpost of the British Empire. It's crawling with British and American and Israeli intelligence assets. God knows what would happen to those children. And among those intelligence assets, there might be many, many Jeffrey Epsteins that we don't know about, whose names are not household names yet, but who are probably there, waiting to protect these children.
Yeah, isn't the king half British?
King is half British, and my understanding is that his whole security detail are British SAS specialists.
Oh, interesting.
It's 2,000 children, right? How many Palestinians in Gaza? 1.8 million.
1.8 million, 1.7.
So I don't know what happens. Tomorrow is the day when this deadline, this blackmail deadline expires. I very much doubt that Hamas is going to blink. And then what? Israel is going to start bombing again. So they're going to turning the rubble into finer rubble? What's the point? They can't win. They're not winning. So all these bombs, they're just killing children and civilians. And Israel has already lost. They already lost that war. And not only that, I'm convinced that the American political class, the administration people, that they know that Israel already lost. I think there's going to be a reason why they're building this massive new embassy in Lebanon, because I think that they are understanding that their unsinkable aircraft carrier in the Middle East is sinking, and they're moving the headquarters to the next aircraft carrier. They've designated Lebanon, but things are not going so well. So now they're trying to push the Lebanese government to toss out Hezbollah from the government. The Lebanese understand what's going on. They're not dumb. They see that they're trying to trigger some kind of a civil war so they could divide and rule in Lebanon, and they have been prepared for this. So General Aoun knows what the empire is working, and I think that he understands that if he goes along, he might plunge his country into a bloody civil war that's only going to benefit Israel, the UK, and the United States.
But wasn't General Aoun approved by the U.S.? Wasn't he a US?
Oh, yes, he was, of course. Yes, he was. But they're not happy because, Hezbollah is still in his government. And so now they're pressuring him to throw Hezbollah out. I don't know what becomes of that, but I think that they understand that they have to work together. Otherwise, the only side in that region that ends up victorious over Lebanon is Israel. I don't think anybody wants that.
Are they going to stick these HTS Syrian rebels against Hezbollah on the borders between the two countries? Because there's already been reported skirmishes between them. Could they just get the U.S. Turkey appointed rebels of Syria to fight their war for them?
They're going to try to get anybody to fight their war for them. But okay, so my understanding is these skirmishes, I don't know, maybe I missed some reports, but some of these skirmishes wasn't even Hezbollah. They were Syrian, local Syrian militias. I didn't understand whether they're self-organized local militias or whether they are remnants of the Syrian Arab army. which we know that parts of the Syrian Arab army remained intact. My understanding is that one tank division at least, crossed the border over to Iraq, and that the best Syrian Arab army troops went into hiding into in the Latakia region, and I don't know, but maybe they adopted the Hamas and Hezbollah strategy of guerrilla warfare, by going underground, by not going frontal against, what's the point when you have these enemies that can drop 2,000-pound bombs on you? It's better to fight in the way that Hezbollah and Hamas have been fighting, and attrit them, because if you're an insurgency, you don't really have to vanquish the enemy. You just have to stay alive until the enemy exhausts themselves.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. We'll have to wait and see what happens, Alex.
Yeah, exactly. And pray for the Palestinians tomorrow. Pray for the Palestinians every day.
Yeah, totally. Well, Alex, for people who want to hear and see more of you, where can people find you?
I'm active on X. My handle is @NakedHedgie, and I have 2 publications on Substack. One is for investors and traders, providing daily trend-following signals on 18 key global markets. It's called iSystem Trend Following. And the other one is my personal Substack, where I write less frequently, but things of more general interest: geopolitics, history, economics, finance, things like this. And it's Alex Krainer's Substack.
Alex, when I first got you on the show, you and I would talk commodities and, the markets. And now, like, all we do is talk geopolitics now instead. It's funny
I
how...
know. I know, Danny, but that's sign of the times, because, I'll tell you, when I launched my YouTube channel, which wasn't so long ago, I think it was 2021 or 22. The name of my YouTube channel was Markets, Trends, and Profits.
Yeah.
And my website, my Substack, all of this, I was, the intent was to talk about portfolio management, risk management, trading commodities, trend following, la. But, what's the use if we end up incinerated in a nuclear Armageddon? So I think that
I agree.
This kind of imposed itself as the central concern, because, if you make nice returns on your portfolio, what's the point if
and all these markets all these markets are politicized anyway. So if you're kind of like aloof of what's going on geopolitically, you're just not with it. Like you're not with it. Like,
yes,
you can't just be like, oh, I'm not going to look at this, but I'm going to just invest. I'm just going to invest without knowing what's going on geopolitically, because like all these energy markets are tied into it. These, the gold, and so we didn't talk about gold,
currencies, the bonds, gold, silver, energy, you name it. Everything is now fluctuating in function of geopolitics.
Yeah. Well, hey, it's a pleasure having you on here, Alex. If you guys enjoyed this broadcast, be sure to give us a like and subscribe to the channel down below. Speaking of gold and silver, be sure to check out our partners over at ITM Trading. I can't encourage you enough to give them a call, or just click on the link down below in the description box, set up an appointment, and figure out what works with you. You'll get a chance to talk to their experts for free. No obligation necessary, no commitment necessary. So be sure to check them out. Prices are really great. The people there are really great as well. All expert, top of the line people in the field. And check us out on Substack at capitalcosm.substack.com. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Comment, go Alex, go in the comment section. If you agreed with Alex's take, if you disagreed with anything, let me know. I do read the comments. Really interested to get your take here, guys. And so with all that said, I'll catch you in the next episode. Bye, y'all.